Here's a question. Can a movie all about resisting totalitarian rule and its plot to maintain complicity through a state of collective mental bliss inadvertently endorse that very concept in the form of nostalgia for the very film that challenged human complicity in the first place? I guess when the movie is The Matrix Resurrections, it can. The Matrix Resurrections sets up in a future where Neo and Trinity are living out seemingly modest lives inside a whole new devious simulation, one where the latter finds herself residing happily with a family, and the former works as a video game developer whose work is based on their experiences in The Matrix. However, neither of them recall leading a revolution against machines and emerging as legends. When a new group of rebels seek them out for help, the two aged heroes must once again set out against their old foes while regaining the consciousness they've since lost and learn to remember who they are, or were. The fourth and long-awaited film in the Matrix franchise is a movie I approached with utmost caution. I really do like the original for its memorable characters, wonderful fight choreography, and unconventional take on the science fiction and action genres. 1999's The Matrix remains one of the most original, ahead of the game, and technically impressive movies ever made, on top of being a major staple of American pop culture. It's the sequels where my reluctance towards this movie originates, and man, oh man, after watching this movie, it was like a bad case of deja vu. The problem with The Matrix Resurrections comes in many forms. Firstly, this movie is like a mashup of the worst parts of both sequels. Reloaded was a clusterfuck of convoluted lore and pretentious ideological musings, while Revolutions amounted to nothing more than a hollow finale of non-stop special effects action and fast-paced nothingness. Matrix Resurrections has a lot of both of them in it, and not nearly enough of what made the original great, aside from all the blatantly self-aware references that get forced in simply for the sake of how every franchise now has to let the audience know it's part of a franchise. This meta take on the legacy of The Matrix had the completely opposite effect on me that Spider-Man No Way Home did. That was a movie that knew how to be something completely original and exciting while still having a cheeky sense of humor that felt natural. In Matrix 4, it feels corny and contrived and didn't make the movie better. If anything, it was the only part of this movie that I could honestly remember in great detail, because this movie is so forgettable. There's nothing The Matrix Resurrections does that any generic off-the-shelf sci-fi actioner could do equally as good, which is really sad when the original, which this movie tries so hard to be a tribute to, was so revolutionary. The action set pieces from the original are the epitome of iconic, while absolutely none of the sequences, bits of dialogue, or especially the newly introduced characters will ever be as recognizable. It introduces a new rebellious hero named Bugs, played by Jessica Henwick, but nothing about her really stood out to me. It also features Priyanka Chopra Jonas as an adult version of Seti from the third movie, but again, this just feels like more pointless fan service from an uninspired script. There's no real reason for this old character to be here because they don't do anything that crucial. They could literally be just anybody, old or new. There are also some major miscastings all throughout the movie. I was a little distracted at first with Fishburne and Weaving being replaced by Yahya Abdul-Mateen and Jonathan Groff, respectively, but I eventually got over it. What I could not get past was Neil Patrick Harris's unconvincing role as an evil program disguised as a therapist intended to keep Neo in his blue-pilled state. It just felt like he was playing some character from an SNL sketch, and the fight scene between him and fellow stage musical icon Groff looks so unintentionally parodic that I almost expected James Corden just to walk out at any point as part of a skit. One pinhole-sized bright spot in this movie is Keanu Reeves. He isn't sleepwalking his way through this movie like Ryan Reynolds in Green Lantern. I legitimately felt like he was interested in making this movie, even though he's right now in the middle of a career uptick thanks to the John Wick films, which, unlike The Matrix, have been consistently excellent. I did not have a fun time watching this movie, which is more of a regurgitation than a resurrection. It's forgettable and confusing. It lacks inspiration and purpose, and brings nothing new to a table that was perfected over 20 years ago. It's just a sad, not very engaging sequel with broad, philosophical jargon of the sequels, mixed with glaringly obvious amount of unnecessary meta-ness. I'm giving it a 2 out of 4, which I honestly feel is a bit generous. Thank you for watching.